Disclaimer. Playing this build may give you a raging Diablo 4 addiction.
Well, that sounds pretty dangerous, so what is this amazing build? It's a hecking frost explosion computer destroying Diablo 4 sorcerer build. Now you may wonder, will this build actually destroy your computer? Probably not, but I had to lower every setting in the game while playing this build, due to all of the goddamn explosions everywhere. So what makes this build so good then? Well, for a few reasons. Firstly, it has infinite crowd control due to Blizzard and the chill effect, making everything frozen. The build also benefits greatly from almost every passive in the skill tree, as well as a ton of Paragon nodes and glyphs, granting us enormous amounts of min-maxing options. And lastly, the damage and mobility this build provides simply makes the build the fastest in the game. So how does this amazing build work then? By keeping everything vulnerable, we can benefit from a ton of passives, granting us the ability to one-shot everything in our path. This vulnerability comes from several different skills, letting us keep it up permanently. Next, by using the Frozen Orb enchantment and by spamming Blizzard, everything around us will be frozen without us having to do anything. While this is happening, our other enchantment will one-shot all the mobs around us, the Ice Shard enchantment. But that is not all. The build also has Hydra to keep all mobs burning, which both grants us multiplicative crit damage as well as reduced damage taken from the Paragon Board. Alright, now you're probably eager to know how you can play this build as well. So let's take a look at the gear and aspects. First, freezing everything around us makes us cold as shit, so we need to put a hat on. Therefore, we are starting with the helmet. Here we will be using the ever-living aspect. Since mobs will be either crowd-controlled or vulnerable at all times, this grants us between 20 to 25 damage reduction at all times. Yeah, you might even say that this aspect will make us ever-living. For stats, we are looking for the following: lucky hit, max life, barrier generation, and cooldown reduction. Next, we have the chest. By using the Frostblitz aspect, we will be making sure to always have Frost Nova available whenever we engage a large pack of elites. This is not only useful, but also makes us coom uncontrollably whenever it is time to make them sit down. As stats, look for all the damage reduction that you can find, because being alive is pretty awesome. Also, make sure to grab max life here. Raiment of the Infinite is also an option, but since this is for Giga Chads only, this will be up to you if you are able to handle it. For gloves, grab Aspect of Piercing Cold. This is the most important aspect in this build, and makes it so that you can play it already from level 1. If you don't have it, then you can find it in Dead Man's Dredge. The most important stat to grab here is ranks to Ice Shards, and other 6 stats are crit chance, lucky hit chance, and attack speed. Next, we have the pants. Here, we want the Disobedience aspect so that we can tank mobs like a boss. You can find this in Halls of the Damned. For stats, grab the following: damage reduction, max life, as well as damage reduction to both close and distant enemies. We obviously want to be fast as fuck, so we grab the Craven aspect next. This will grant us a permanent movement speed buff since we will be dropping blizzards all over the place. If you don't have it, then the Windstriker aspect from Shivta Ruins is another good aspect that you can use. As stats, we want movement speed, mana cost reduction, intelligence, and more movement speed. Now for the weapon, try to find aspect of Frozen Memories and get the following stats: high DPS, core skill damage, intelligence, crit damage, as well as damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Alright, what about the amulet then? First, grab the Storm Swell aspect. By having this on the amulet, we can be granted a 60% damage bonus, because we will not only be having a heck ton of vulnerability, we will also be having permanent barriers with this build. You can find this in Onyx Hold. For stats, starts by grabbing movement speed and cooldown reduction. Then grab ranks of Devouring Blaze and Permafrost for the extra multiplicative damage. Next, we have the rings. First, take the Prodigy's Aspect. You can find this in Witchwater, and it will be granting us a hecking ton of mana. For stats, grab Lucky Hit, Crit Chance, Max Life, and Cold Damage. For the other ring, grab Aspect of the Umbral. You can find this in Champion's Demise. If you played Diablo 4 before Season 1, then you may have nightmares from this dungeon. But don't worry, you only need to do it once. The reason to grab this aspect is mainly because it will grant us mana each time we use our Blizzard, allowing us to just keep spamming it. For stats, grab the same stats as the other ring. And lastly, we have the offhand. To make sure that our Frost Orbs actually hit their target, and because it's hecking cool, we grab Aspect of Frozen Orbit. As stats, grab Cooldown Reduction, Lucky Hit, Crit Chance, and Mana Cost Reduction. If you're a soy boy, better cuck. Well then, having damage reduction is also fine here. Good job so far, my friends. We are now done with the gear and aspects. Now, we will take a look at the gems to use, as well as a closer look at our enchantments. But first, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. Firstly, having emerald gems in our weapon is probably no surprise. In our armor, we grab ruby gems. And lastly, having skull gems in our jewelry will increase our tankiness, which is damn nice. Now for the enchantments, we have Frozen Orb and Ice Shard. Firstly, the Frozen Orb is used to grant us more frozen targets, as well as an AoE vulnerability. Whenever we are not spamming Ice Shards by ourselves, then the Ice Shards enchantment will be our main damage ability. These will be flying out whenever a target is frozen, which they will be from either Blizzard, Frost Nova, or our Frozen Orbs. Alright, what do you say about taking a look at some crazy good vampiric powers? Heck yeah! The first one we will be using is Prey on the Weak, as this grants us some nice multiplicative damage. Next we have Feed the Coven. This grants resources, but also multiplicative damage, and we can benefit from this whenever we spawn our hydras, granted they actually hit something. Another great vampiric power is Domination. This not only grants us a ton of damage, but non-elites will also be executed whenever they are low health, allowing us to GTFO without worrying about they staying alive. Next, grab Undying. This may not look like much to the world, but it is actually insane for sorceress since they have no good self-sustain. You simply spam abilities, and this power will keep you alive. And lastly, we have Ravenous. Since we are both stacking movement speed as well as Lucky Hit, this will be granting us up to 40% attack speed consistently, which is a huge DPS boost. Okay, friends, do you know what time it is now? Yeah, you're goddamn correct. It's time for my high IQ skill tree. For basic skill, it doesn't matter what you choose, since we will not be using them. For the first few levels, however, you should be grabbing Arclash, since this is the only one that actually does damage. It's also good until you get some more mana regeneration. As core skill, start off by maxing out Ice Shards and grab Enhanced Ice Shards, as well as Destructive Ice Shards for more damage and vulnerability. Next, take Frozen Orb as well as Enhanced and Greater Frozen Orb. Make sure to not forget Potent Warding, since resistances are actually important in Season 2. In the defensive tree, we start off by grabbing Teleport as well as Enhanced and Shimmering Teleport for the damage reduction. If you're a Giga Chad, also grab Glass Cannon for that sick DPS. Next, take Ice Armor for more barrier, and then grab Frost Nova as well as Enhanced and Mystical Frost Nova. Lastly, we grab 1 point in Elemental Attunement for the possibility of resetting our defensive skills. To make sure that we can benefit from burning passives, we will be using Hydra, where the burning comes from Summoned Hydra. Next, grab Precision Magic, as we will be needing Lucky Hit for mana regeneration later on. And lastly, grab Align the Elements, Mana Shield, and Protection for the defensiveness. In the Mastery tree, grab Blizzard as well as Enchants and Wizard's Blizzard to reduce our Ice Shard cost by 20%. For some multiplicative crit damage, take Inner Flames and Devouring Blaze. We will not be using any ultimate, but make sure to grab all of these passive skills, as they will grant us multiplicative damage as well as the chance to get 15 mana back whenever we damage vulnerable enemies. And lastly, the key passive, Avalanche. Not only will this grant us free casts, but it also increases our damage by a ton. Now we only have the Paragon Board and a guide how to play the game left. Let's start by taking a look at the Paragon Board. In the starting board, grab Control. This will help us control the battlefield by exploding every frozen enemy around us. Next, go the Icefall board and make sure to grab the Legendary node. Then also grab Elementalist for the multiplicative damage and buffs to the nearby nodes. Next, go to the Frigid Fate board and grab the Legendary node. After you've done that, take the Destruction glyph. In the Enchantment Master board, we ignore the Legendary node and instead go straight for the Winter glyph, both for the damage and increase to the nearby rare nodes. And lastly, we go to the Burning Instinct board and we grab the Frostbite glyph. Alright, only the gameplay loop left then, because knowing how to actually use the build is a pretty nice bonus. Firstly, we never need to stop moving whenever we fight normal packs of mobs. Simply spam Blizzard on them and put down a Hydra if you feel like it and let them die. Use Teleport as often as possibly to get yourself around the map, as well as for the barrier and damage reduction it gives. Whenever we are fighting a large pack of elites, we use Frost Nova and nuke them down, and they should die almost instantly. If Frost Nova is not up, then drop a few blizzards to make them frozen and nuke them down by spamming ice shards. Next, make sure to use Ice Barrier whenever you have no barrier up. This can also be used whenever you are out of mana, since using cooldowns grants us mana. This can, for example, happen during boss fights. The only part this build can't one-shot happens to be bosses, since they are not easily frozen. Here you have two options. Either you drop a Blizzard and Hydra and start spamming Ice Shards. The other option is to keep dropping Blizzards and Frost Nova on the boss, go AFK, and wait for it to be staggered. Once it is staggered, you should be getting infinite mana and be able to one-shot it. Nice job, friends. You made it to the end. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.